Hello and welcome our blood viewers to RTD's News English Edition. As usual, we begin tonight's news with the major and top highlights. Let's follow. Opening of the summit in the presence of some 50 heads of state, US Africa Summit. Joe Biden for a permanent African presence at the G20, Washington. Validation of the strategic plan to fight malaria between 2024 and 2026. Welcome back to our news from our beloved viewers. 8 years after the last lunch summit, the Africa United States Summit has just opened. Nearly 50 American heads of state and government are participating in the second edition of this high-level summit in Washington, D.C. The President of the Republic, Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, who is leading a strong delegation, is also taking part in this summit alongside his African and American counterparts. Several topics were discussed, especially the African leaders have formulated priorities, including ways and means to consolidate ties in the field of security and strengthen the support of the United States to African countries to maintain peace in several countries of the African continent. During the summit, African leaders expressed their desire to have a permanent seat at the United Nations for the African Union to participate and defend its interests in international fora, as well as to be represented at the G20 level and on the boards of the World Bank. The American president announced $55 billion of investments in different sectors to boost the economy of the African continent and fight against unemployment. The President of the Republic, Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, has emphasized the importance of strengthening partnerships between Africa and the United States in general, and in particular between Djibouti and the United States, especially as our country hosts the only American base in Africa. In a statement made by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Mr. Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, he dealt with the latest development of the African American Summit, and this summit constitutes an opportunity for Djibouti and the United States to advance their relations, he said. Joe Biden pleaded yesterday in Washington for a permanent representative of Africa everywhere in all the institutions. Along a worldwide, including the UN Security Council and the G20, he was speaking before about 50 African leaders at the United States Africa Summit. Joe Biden also announced a tour of sub-Saharan Africa without specifying a date. He would thus be the first president to visit the part of the continent since Barack Obama's trip in 2015 to Kenya and Ethiopia. A stance welcomed by the current chairman of the African Union. While Joe Biden promised assistance in security or democratic reforms, he also advocated for better governance on the continent. National news now. In the morning of Thursday, December 15, took place in the capital Arta city of the region of Arta. The visit of the Ministry of Interior and the Office of the Prefect for a working meeting with the prefects of the region of the Interior, Ali Sabeh, Dakhil, Tajura, and Oboch, which took place in the prefecture of Arta. A warm welcome was reserved by the prefect of Arta, Mr. Mohammed Sheikh Hassan, and the notables to the Ministry of Interior, Mr. Saeed Nuh Hassan. The objective of this meeting was to get information on the situation of the regions as well as the main concerns and governance of the population, but especially on the planning of the general census of the population inhabitants planned soon for the entire regions. The Director General of the INSTAD, Institute of Statistics of Djibouti, who took this opportunity, explained the various activities scheduled under the census and planning phases with the prefects who are presidents of the regions. The Minister of Interior asked the prefects of the region to support the process of the general census of population and housing, which is a strategic and important exercise for our country. A validation workshop on the Malaria Control Strategic Plan 2024-2026 was held at the Kempinski Hotel in the presence of the Secretary General of Health, Dr. Saleh Bonita Turab, the UNDP representative, Mrs. Emmanuel, the WHO representative, Dr. Rishandel van Verdit, and the President of the CCMI, Mr. Ahmed Saad. Organized by the National Malaria Control Program, this validation workshop of the 2004-2026 strategic plan is an extension of the current National Strategic Plan to the 2020-2024, which includes all preventative and curative actions such as mass distributions of LLINS, destruction of breeding grounds, and period-drug prevention campaigns. In addition, vector control operations and special intradomiciliary spraying target the most affected areas of the capital. Supported by various United Nations organizations, these governmental efforts to fight malaria have already yielded convincing results, with a reduction in the number of cases by 24% in 2021 compared to 2020. However, given the endemic nature of malaria in our country, the Ministry of Health aims to articulate and intensify the national response to accelerate this downward trend until the disease is completely eliminated. The UNDP and WHO representative thanked the Ministry of Health for organizing this workshop and recalling that the fight against malaria is necessary to protect the population. In his speech, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Health recorded that his department has initiated several activities to fight against malaria, which has reduced the number of malaria cases in the Republic of Djibouti. The multi-purpose port of Dorale, or DMP of its English known name, welcomed this morning the MV Aquarius Ace, a ro-ro ship of Japanese shipping line MOL, with 2,235 vehicles on board for transportation, and for the MV Morning, a really ro-ro ship of the Ecor shipping line, uploaded 401 units of vehicles at the PDSA historic port of Djibouti. The multi-purpose port of Dorale, with its competitive rates and its incomparable geographical location, is a major assist for carriers wishing to carry out transshipment. Transshipment is an action of shipping goods or containers to an intermediate destination, then to another destination. Today's call demonstrates the confidence that this Japanese ship owner has in the facility of Djibouti and DMP in particular. Today, with the number of 2,235 vehicles, MOL is constantly increasing the volume of its cargo to DMP. We must recognize that DMP, with its know-how and its attractiveness, seems to succeed the confidence of its customer and consequently has strengthened its position as a port and logistics platform of high level. Having a strategic geographical position on the Bab el-Mandab, this port allows to consolidate the international connectivity of Djibouti and to strengthen the Djiboutian competitiveness at the international level. The port of Djibouti, which has been a long economic lung of the country, is demonstrating its importance and usefulness when it comes to meeting a demand as strong as today. Its complementary with the multi-purpose port of Dorale is no longer in question. The MV Morning, a Lily ro-ro ship, and the Ukor shipping line has unloaded 401 units of vehicles at the historical port of Djibouti. The port of Djibouti, which has long been the economic lung of the country, shows its importance and usefulness when it comes to meeting such a strong demand, with the arrival of 2 ships carrying 2,236 cars. The complementary of the old port of Djibouti with the multi-purpose port of Dorale is no longer in question. The Ministry of National Education and Vocational Training, in partnership with the International Organization of the Francophonie, is organizing the first DCLIC Pro Forum in Djibouti. This event, which takes place on November 14 and 15, 2022, is part of the pilot project DCLIC Train to Digital. Many economic operators, including companies in the digital sector, took part in its launching ceremony, sponsored by the Secretary General of MENFOB, Mr. Mohammed Abdullah Mahyoub. A delegation of the IOF, led by Mrs. Umma Awar, takes part in this event. It must be said that digital technology affects all economic sectors in that it can accelerate the development of new digital jobs. As such, the MENFOB has established a diversified and quality training offer adapted to the evolution of digital in the economic landscape. Djibouti is one of the 10 Francophone countries participating in the DCLIC project. The Secretary General of the Ministry of Communication in charge of Posts and Telecommunications, Dr. Ahmed Yusuf Elmi, on the side of the Ambassador of Federal Republic of Somalia to the Republic of Djibouti, Mr. Salat Ali Ejele, closed this Thursday at the Hotel Axias a training workshop on pastoral technique for the benefit of Somali Post from 11 to 16 December. This training workshop was organized by the Djibouti Post thanks to the support of the International Postal Union. The event was attended by the Director General of Djibouti Post, Dr. Bahanan Ali Midil, as well as the Somali operators. This training workshop will allow the Somali Post agents to integrate the basic techniques essential in the accomplishment of their daily work. The session was closed by the delivery of certificates to the agents of the Somali Post by the officials, including the Secretary General of the Ministry of Communication in charge of Posts and Telecommunications, Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Somalia to the Republic of Djibouti, as well as the Director General of the Post of Djibouti. He never failed us in all areas, he said. Continuing, he said that this training will be beneficial to that the Somali Post can regain its former prestige and regain the confidence of its potential customers. The CDC of PK12, and Section 7 welcomed an illusionist, Dines Faber from Bordeaux, is a magician. From December 14 to 15, in collaboration with the French Institute of Djibouti, this magician performed in the partnership with the Ministry of Youth and Culture in order to increase leisure activities for young people. The representative of MJC, the directors of the different CDCs, as well as the young people were able to enjoy an amazing show. During his performance, this talented magician dazzled his audience with many confusing tricks with the help of monopoly officers such as rings, rubber balls, fruits, and magic wand. He knew how to challenge the reasoning and logic of the public on a humorous background. The spectators were captivated by these tricks and illusions that were constantly being performed. The youngest were also able to participate by learning the simplest tricks, while the elders tried to discern the real from the fake. It is on a joyful note that this meeting with the world of magic ended. Following a long investigation, the gendarmeries of the Brigade of Section 6 and 7 districts solved a case of large-scale theft, and this in record time. It all started with a compliment of a victim who went to the brigade after the bulgari of his business. An imported batch of clothing composed of 1,800 polo t-shirts, 29,000 short-sleeve t-shirts, and 5,100 caps were stolen. The damage is estimated at 4,226,000 Djiboutian francs. Immediately, investigators were started, and the alleged receiver of the stolen goods was identified. Half of the stolen objectives were seized by the gendarmes, while the other half were simply sold by the alleged funds. Continuing their investigations, the investigators put their hands on the main author of these facts, an employee of the company object of the burglary. During the investigation, a cash sum of 2,500,000 Djiboutian francs, which is none other than the proceeds from the sale of the stolen projects, was seized, placed in police custody. The persons involved admitted the facts. At the end of its investigation, they will be brought to justice to answer for their actions. On the occasion of the Qatar World Cup, the high-level training ground, as well as the community development center of the city of Assajuk, Al Sibih, are installed giant screens to offer young people the opportunity to follow collectively the different phases of the World Cup of football. The different matches broadcasted live by the channels being Sport and RTD are also followed in the neighborhoods. The restaurants live the matches since the beginning of the World Cup. Human and technical means are mobilized in the operation of setting up these screens to allow soccer lovers to vibrate in echo and to the rhythm of the applause of the supporters. Following the example of other sites in the capital in the regions, the Secretary of State in charge of Sports and Ministry of Youth and Culture have installed giant screens in Tajora and in the neighboring localities so that the population of these areas can follow the different matches of the World Cup in the best conditions. Every evening, the inhabitants of Tajora and those of the locality give themselves an appointment to follow together the best moments of this World Cup. It should be noted that sport, especially soccer, by its very nature, is participatory, brings communities and individuals both together, is based on a message of inclusion, brings out the common elements and areas cultural and ethnic barriers. Shifting gears towards our international scene now, a day of rest in Doha as the World Cup semifinals have reached their climax. The fans in Qatar are now looking forward to the final scheduled this Sunday. The Moroccans have already digested their defeat against France and are hoping to conclude their incurable journey in style with a third world place against Croatia this Saturday. The grand final will pit Messi's Argentina against Mbappe's France, two nations determined to bring a third star on their shirts. Well, by this, our beloved viewers, we finally conclude this edition. Thank you for being with us, and make sure to tune in later for more. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you once again for joining us. Take care.